Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Today Show. I am your host, Rebecca Weintraub, and I'm an intuition coach. I help people develop and strengthen their intuition. And today I have Coach Benton McTaggart. How are you, Benton?
I am amazing, and thank you for having me.
So viewers, Benton and I have been working together for over a year, I think, at least a year.
It's actually more than a year. I would probably say a year and 2 months now. It's been quite
Yeah.
some time.
So I remember when we first were, I guess we were both in school or coming out of school, and I said, does anybody want to barter, to get some coaching hours in? So Benton and I have been together for a long time, and we've mutually benefited from each other. And he's very dear to me. So I'm so happy to have you on today.
I'm excited.
Awesome. So tell everybody, what type of coach are you, Benton?
Yeah, so I am a peak mental performance coach, and specifically, I work with high achievers like Rebecca, let go of fear and their inner critics so that they can create bulletproof confidence and motivation to basically create whatever they want in their lives and careers, whether it's getting a promotion, whether it's doubling their salary, or just simply not being trapped by their own negative thinking again. I help them to move past those mental barriers.
I love this because, and it's kind of, I won't say it's a difficult niche or like a difficult way to coach, but it's like you kind of have to be there first in order to lead someone at the same time, right?
Oh,
So
definitely. You got to be there. Like the thing that I've learned, in just doing this over the last couple of years, it's been a journey, right? And the mental stuff, sometimes it's there and it's hidden and you don't even know that it's there. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you cannot help people to kind of move past, what's blocking them.
So let's talk about this a little bit because I know, like for me, the coaching that I do with intuition and everything, I mean, I feel like it's a lifetime I've been working on it, where everything's kind of added up to this point where I can contribute to my clients and I can help them get from maybe point A to B to C to wherever they're going. Talk a little bit about what your transition looked like. Like, how did you get to the point of being able to support your clients?
hmm So I would say that my journey into the personal development, personal transformation space, it started in 2014. So I remember distinctly in June of 2014, I was graduating from business school, and this is going to sound a little weird for a lot of people, but I remember, it probably should have been the day that I'm most proud of, right? Having gone through an MBA program that was, in my opinion, very difficult and quantitative, and the only thing that I could literally focus on was how fat and overweight I felt. Like I just felt so insecure, and it really blocked me from celebrating that moment. And all the inner thoughts that, like you're too fat, you overate, and all the stuff, like it just started bubbling and bubbling and bubbling, and it created this feeling of shame and guilt. And I knew that day that I had to make a change. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I had to make a change because this was something that I've been, my weight specifically, I was struggling with for a long time. And I realized that, I already knew what to do in terms of like changing my eating habits, starting to exercise and all that stuff. I already knew what I needed to do, but I wasn't doing it. And so I really started exploring, what's really holding me back from getting to the weight that I wanted at the time. And so the more like I dug and I started to research, I realized that a big part of it was how I was seeing myself. And based on that image, I literally created an identity where I had this message that I can't lose weight. And I realized that it started to transition into not just with my health, but also with my career. Like I can't get that job. I can't earn that amount of money. I can't do this and I can't do that. And so I started working through those mental blocks, and I started with, um, self-help books. I read The Happiness Advantage and some other books that really dug into the mindset stuff. I read Immunity to Change. And I realized that the more evidence I got about how like your thoughts and your beliefs, it literally shaped your reality, the more I started to believe that I could lose weight, right? I could become lighter. And over time, within a space of, I would say probably like 7 months, I ended up losing like 50 pounds. And a big part of that was just a shift in how I was seeing myself and what I was doing and why I was doing what I was doing. So that gradually evolved. I applied that thinking to how I saw myself, because before I always thought I was an introvert and I was very quiet and all that stuff. And I started applying that to my career and going after things that I wanted. I ended up, my first job out of school was being a coach, which that was totally unexpected, and I just kept on growing and growing and growing in that space. I realized that I really loved it because a lot of the people that came to me, even though they were looking for support around either advancing their careers or getting promoted, the mindset stuff started to pop up. Like it was always those inner blocks, as we call them in IPEC, the like the gremlins and the assumptions and all those stuff. Of course, at that time I didn't know like that's what they were called, but they were always there and they were always limiting people. So I got more and more curious about that, and how could I help people to get their results even faster. And so that's when I decided to enroll in IPEC, get my coaching certification, and I've been doing that ever since. So that's kind of a very long-winded way of talking about my personal journey in recognizing that I was limiting myself in terms of how I saw my body and my weight. And a big part of it really had to do with deep-rooted belief systems that I had about myself, and just busting through those and kind of, helping people to do similar things in their own lives.
Benton, what was it like applying that new way of thinking to one or more parts of your life? When you first started doing it, what was it like?
It was hard. It was really, really hard, because what I realized is that I had a very specific way from me as it relates to the mindset piece. I'm a warrior, right? So I'm always worrying about what could go wrong. And I've had many, in those first couple of months, like I've had many mishaps, and I would just spiral. So I would be doing good with my thoughts for a couple of days. And then I have a thought would come up like, this is not working. Right? And because it's not working, then I would start feeling bad that it's not working, and I go back to old habits. So to be honest, like those first couple of months, it was kind of a yo-yo effect, where I would have these moments when I'm really good at my thoughts, and I'm watching them and I'm journaling and doing all this stuff. And then the old beliefs would start surfacing, back and back and back again, until eventually I recognized that that is actually a pattern. It's how that belief system manifests itself. And so, over time I realized that, okay, this is what I can anticipate. So I know that I'm going to start out and I'm going to be on a high, and I'm going to watch my thoughts and I'm going to be really excited. And then I'm going to get this thought that it's not working. And then it just creates this cycle, and there's going to be, I'm going to look for all the evidence that suggests that it's not working. So I haven't lost any weight this week. I messed up with my eating today. My boss corrected my work, and all these kind of little pieces would support that broader belief that it's not working. And so over time, after doing that and just recognizing that's just a natural part of how the mind works, and getting into the space where I can actually anticipate what it's going to do and not get caught up in what it is saying, that really, really helped.
I love that you just mentioned that, because it's something that, like, the pattern thing has been something that I'm like, ooh, I should document this. Like the next time I start this cycle or whatever, like I should document this so that I can see really what's going on here. And that's usually, like I've shared before on the show, that like my weight has always been something that's like my beautiful challenge in life, right? And so I'm always like whenever I like eat that sugar or whatever it is, it's like, it all comes crashing down. And then I think to myself, ooh, I should document when I start again and see what happens. Because I always seem to forget
Mm-hmm.
What happens in that cycle? So when you were able to look at that sort of from an observer point of view or bird's eye point of view, like talk more about that, recognizing that pattern and how understanding that helped you kind of push all the way or 90% of the way into this new thinking.
Yeah, you know what? So one really big breakthrough that I have kind of talking about that observer pattern, right, was my body, like my physical body. It because I've been worrying for so long in my life for and we could go into all the details of why I did that. It had this familiar place where my shoulders would get hunched. So I realized that even though I had this new mental conditioning that I was trying to create, my body literally was resisting that, right? And so I realized that every time I went back into that pattern, it was the old identity of Benton, who was not confident, who was a warrior. And because in a way I felt like my body was addicted to that feeling of like just living in shame and guilt, like it would do whatever it could to make me feel that. So when I started observing, this is an identity, this is literally when my body does this, when my shoulders start to get really tense, I recognize that there's a connection with what I was thinking, right? And that's where like the inner critic, it would come out. And the thing was, something about you can't, and it started to show up. So in a sense, I had a really big breakthrough because sometimes the beliefs, they're there, but you don't realize that they're there. But my body, it became like a really good kind of messenger into what was going on. So whenever I felt myself, for me, when I started feeling really tense, like, and my shoulders start to hunch,
Mhm.
I knew that something was going on up here, and it was time to start observing. It also was a really good opportunity for me to start noticing like triggers. So I had specific trigger points. Like if I, for example, saw somebody who, let's say I'm in a room and they are extremely fit and lean, right? And they look really awesome in their suits or whatever, my shoulders would start to tense, right? And I would start to shrink, like literally start getting smaller. And then what was happening here is something like you can never look that way or you can never do that. So just kind of staying in that powerful observer mode, it really, really helped. And then as time evolved, like not getting attached to what was going on, just noticing what I was saying internally and accepting that that's where I am, right? And feeling, the guilt or the shame or whatever. Like for me, it was a lot of like level one energy. And just not getting attached to that, but just observing it, just noticing it, and also being more compassionate with myself because I recognized that it was just, that identity that I had that wanted to protect me and wanted to keep me safe because it didn't want me to go out and try, to, for example, get a six pack and then I fail. Because if I fail, I'm not just going to be embarrassed that I didn't meet this goal, but I'm making all this declaration to the public. What are people going to think about if I don't meet this goal? So it was just like this process where you start to observe. My body became like a really, really good awareness tool that helped me to go into here, and see and figure out what I was thinking.
I find that fascinating because I know for me, like when I'm overweight and I'm not feeling good in my body, it's hard for me to pick up on the indicators. Like it's almost like my body goes numb. And unless something is to the point of where I'm like, going up the stairs and then I get to the top and I'm like, okay, unless it's something extreme, like I my body for me actually is not the thing that's going to be pointing out, like it's not going to be the thing that's alerting me. But I love that you talked about like three of your dimensions, and they're your inner dimensions, your mental, emotional, and physical. You mentioned all three were kind of working together in tandem to give you these alerts, alerting you to the patterns allowing you to make a change and a conscious choice. And I'm wondering like if we look at the fourth dimension, spirituality or being spiritual, were you getting indicators from a spiritual sense as well? And how did that play into this sort of teamwork that was going on?
Yeah, so I did actually. So for a while, I felt off. Like I felt very stuck and I felt like I was just spinning. Like you have all these things going on, like you could make all this change and you could do all this stuff. But there was something that was really off and I couldn't like put a finger on it. So, I'd gone to therapy, I read different books, I talked to mentors, friends, and everything. But I didn't feel energized. You know what I mean? So even though on a career level, like I was still having breakthroughs with my mindset. I was moving up in my career. I was creating relationships and everything, but internally something felt off. And that's when I realized that a big part of it had to do with like the spiritual piece, and more specifically my values, right? Like there were like for me, one of the things that it's really important to me is this value of growth, right? And learning. And whenever I feel like I'm stuck and I'm not growing and I'm just in the same pattern, which it happened with weightlifting actually. Like those moments when I start feeling stuck and something just feels off, then I know intuitively that something is happening on a spiritual level where I am out of alignment with what's going on. Right. And so I've gotten to this point where I realize that for me, the way that my intuition speaks to me specifically is I get a feeling, right? And I get a feeling right here in my heart. It's just a little flutter. And when I pay attention to it, like I know something is off, like spiritually. And usually it has to go back to either one of my values or if I'm doing something that's out of integrity with who I am. Right. So sometimes this is gonna sound crazy, but I would, I don't know, like go out and I'm buying something that I know it's not gonna make my body feel good, even though in the moment it might be delicious. I can feel that little flutter, right? And just learning to trust it and learning to listen to it. I don't always listen to it because sometimes your mind is so active. But what I've learned over time is when I stop and I pause, and just what I call it is trying to hear myself. I go here to see what's going on. What my intuition is saying, and that has helped to be like a navigator for me.
I love that you talk about that. And it's funny, with my clients, I give them like this little exercise and I do it for myself all the time. And I don't always listen to it either, but essentially like if we're looking at our 4 dimensions, our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, each one gets a vote, right? So like when I'm thinking about food and there, like it's a strong, like my mental dimension is just filled with do it, you want it, eat it, eat it, eat it. I have to like pull back. And as you were talking about, I love that you're using the term observer because we can swim in that and think that that's the only dimension that matters. And that's the only thing that's happening at that time. But when we pull back to that observer, we can say, okay, mental, clearly your vote is yes. But like emotional, what do you want? Well, I don't really want to do that to myself. Like I know my heart will hurt if I eat this food or something. And then you're physical. It's like, well, I'm trying to get into that dress and I've been thinking about this for 3 months and I want to get into that dress. I don't want to kill that momentum. And then spiritually, it's like, well, when I eat that, like, I create these blockages, these spiritual blockages because the sugar is just going like running amok, So in short, it's like each one gets a vote. And and it's this, yeah, it's the same thing you were talking about. Like no matter what, like little trick you do or little exercise or whether you just stop and pause and breathe and really ask yourself what you want. It's so important when it comes to making these kinds of decisions, because as you were talking about before, we can jump right back into that pattern again. And that pattern can continue for a long time.
Yes, absolutely. And something, that I've learned, Rebecca, in doing this piece, and especially happening consistently in the spiritual piece, because I feel like it's that bigger part of you that always sees everything, right? Like, and it just knows what's right for you. Something that has been very effective for me and the clients that I work with is this whole idea of tapping into identity, right? Especially when you have those moments when you have to make choices, right? Like you have a delicious burger and you're out with friends. Do you choose between the burger, and just having fun and doing what everybody's doing, or do you do something that's healthy and you know that when you wake up tomorrow morning, apart from the mental piece where you're not, like literally like, why did you do that? And getting in that place where you're starting to spiral or feeling guilty, you wake up feeling really good. And so the thing that has helped me is connecting like an identity with my choice, right? So for me, like something like I am fit and healthy. I'm a fit and healthy person, right? Like those are two values that are important to me. I want to be fit and I also want to be healthy. And it connects with my spiritual being because that's who I want to be. And so when I'm able to kind of tap into, okay, what's the identity? It usually makes the choice a lot easier, right? So no, it's not, oh, I'm on a diet, which can be hard, but it's an identity that I'm creating for myself, which is I'm a fit and healthy person. Will this choice that I'm about to make lead to that or kind of create that? And so doing that on a moment by moment basis, I found that it has simplified things for me and it makes it a lot easier.
So let's talk about in general, like these new choices that we're making, the choices that we feel are right for us at the time or benefit us in some kind of way or are connected to deeply to our values.
Mm-hmm.
How, it sometimes keeping in the pattern that we're doing it has a lot of weight, right? We've been doing it for so long that gravitational pull or whatever, it just like wants us to stay in that pattern.
And you're not even aware, right? You get in autopilot.
Well, that's the thing. And so I have like a couple questions, and I won't stack them, but I guess my question is like, how does, if we're talking about attaching to that identity, like this being something that's really important, that could hold a lot of weight and could battle up against this like repetitive pattern that we've been doing. How do you shift it so that the identity itself holds more weight than this repetitive pattern that we've been doing for so long?
Mm-hmm. So there are a couple of things, right? So the first piece is being really clear on why are you creating this identity, right? Like what's the intention behind it? Is it that you want to lead a healthier and happier life? Is it that you want to have an abundance of energy so that you can, show up more powerfully for your family, for your kids? Is it that, just having, if we're using an example of I'm fit and healthy, just having more energy, right? Like when you're around people, you magnetize them and you have this confidence that generates opportunities for you. And so when you connect the identity back to what I call like your why and how it's going to benefit you, like how it's literally going to change multiple dimensions of your life, it gives it a lot more meaning, right? It gives it energy. And I found that we would say we kind of want to, like I want to work out more, I want to do something, but there isn't like a clear intention behind it. And how, in my opinion, how it's not just going to benefit you, but how is it going to serve others around you? I find like when you approach it from that perspective, where this change in who you want to be, it's serving others, right? It puts us in that space of service. And so when you come to those moments that you got to make a choice, it's much easier for you to make that choice, and you don't have to battle with making that choice, right? So getting really clear on why you want to create the identity. The other piece, in my opinion, I feel like you got to make peace with the old identity that you're trying to release, right? So because you've had that version of yourself for a while, and it's really showing up because it is ensuring that it wants you to survive. And I think as human beings, like our natural tendency is to survive. So really kind of making peace with that identity, thanking it for what it has done for you to date, and releasing it, right? Giving it certainty that this identity that you're creating, it is in charge, and it will take care of things. And you got to do that constantly, right? Because it's been so conditioned to be in what I call the driver's seat that it's going to show up. So you got to acknowledge, accept, and then release it. And then the third piece is really recognizing the tendencies and the patterns, right? So that once they start to sneak up, you know before they happen what you need to do. So what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, I am creating this identity that I'm fit and healthy. Like one of the patterns that I typically have is, and it goes to the old habit of just eating whatever I want. Once I work out in the evenings, I am going to come home and I'm going to think I deserve to get myself a burger, right? And so I'm going to go buy a burger, but as opposed to, okay, the fit and healthy Benton, what he needs to do is ensure that he makes meals in the evening. So when he comes home, it's just easier as popping it into the microwave and eating. And it's meals that are also delicious, right? Because you got to recognize what it is that you want. Like if you're going to create something that you're not going to enjoy, it's not going to work. But you recognize that you might like a particular, like carbs or sweets or whatever, and you do stuff in moderation so that you set yourself up not to fail, as opposed to going through these old extremes where you're just not gonna make it. You know what I mean? So just getting in that space where you know what the patterns and habits are and you start anticipate and putting processes in place or systems, whatever you want to call them, to ensure that you don't get caught in the old patterns. And if you do kind of what I call slip up, just accept, right? Accept that this is what I did. Get curious about why you did it and move on. Because once you kind of go into the spiral where you start beating yourself up, right? And you start creating those emotions, and before you know it, you start feeling guilt or shame. You're binge watching Netflix, you're on the couch, you have a mac and cheese, and it's the whole cycle starts back. Just simply accept that this is what happened. Get curious about it. Why did you do what you do? And move on. Okay, got it. What's my choice right now? Once you're able to do that, over time your mind gets accustomed to that way of thinking and seeing things, so it doesn't feel like it's that much work.
So for someone who's never done this before, for someone who's not like who hasn't really dove into the personal growth world or something, right? Like this, it can almost feel really scientific, right? It's almost, in a lot of ways, it's a scientific approach. And of course, like our emotions and everything and spirituality and stuff are connected to this. But for someone who's never like sort of dissected in this way and understood themselves, I mean, it's almost, to me, it's kind of like a puzzle comes up. This isn't very scientific, but like if you dump over a box with a bunch of puzzle pieces, like everybody does a puzzle slightly differently, right? But for me, I'm looking for the edges first. Then I'm putting the colors that are similar together. And then I'm, seeing, okay, this color goes near that color. Let's see if we can merge them together. And before you know it, like the puzzle is forming and you're putting that last piece in. So you could say that there's a scientific approach to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, it seems like for me, listening to you, a lot of this kind of like your mind is really engaged in this entire thing.
Yeah.
And it like, it's almost like that's where everything sits and everything gets collected and put sort of in this mental dimension. So for someone who has never really done this before and has never looked at themselves this way, like how would you get them started to shifting their perspective to start collecting or recognizing or observing? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so I think it's a very simple process. So for different people, they have different ways of kind of getting in that habit of creating the mindset, the peak performance mindset that they want. So the simple thing that I typically use with clients, like when they're starting out, is just getting in that space where you're just recording thoughts that you have, right? So literally start writing down, like let's say, for example, every day you drink coffee at 7 in the morning. As a part of that process, right, you are already drinking coffee. Just for 30 seconds, tune in with what I'm thinking, right? It's very simple. You're not doing anything out of the box. So tune in with what I'm thinking when I grab my cup of coffee, or as soon as I open my eyes, I'm pairing it with an old habit that I already have in place. And starting very simple to just simply just start noticing stuff, right? And putting them in like your thoughts in categories. So it might be good or bad. Thoughts that I feel are empowering or disempowering, like whatever language you want to use, and get them in that space where they have some sort of ritual that they create to start noticing these stuff. So it could be with a habit that they already have in place, like if when you grab coffee or when you take your dog out, you could just check in. Maybe it is, each time you get in your car to drive to work or to drive away from work, so that you're starting to notice it, because the awareness piece, it is so critical. It's really, really important. And I believe, in my opinion, it's like 90% of the job, right? Like you gotta be aware of those like patterns that we have in the way that we think, and we gotta consciously start noticing. It might also be something that I did when I started in this space. Like I had this bracelet that I wore. So each time I look at the bracelet, it served as a trigger for me to check in with where my mindset was, right? So for different people, different strategies will work. I've worked with clients who they're so in tune with their emotions, so they know that once they start feeling a particular way, in other words, let's say they're having a feeling that it's not a good feeling. So let's say they're feeling angry or they're feeling upset or whatever, it serves as a trigger to check in. What might be a thought that I could be having right now that's causing me to feel this way? Or what has triggered me to start feeling this? And so they get into this investigative space. So they basically have like triggers in place that serves as a motivator for them to start checking in and seeing what's going on, as opposed to, I'm just gonna wake up and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be, like this observer of my thoughts. I'm gonna be in complete level 6 energy, and I'm just gonna observe, and I'm not gonna be attached. It literally, you gotta take baby steps. Just start really small. Have specific points in your day or specific triggers in place that serves as a reminder for you to tune in with what's going on. Some people, they are really aware of their behavior. So maybe it is when they're about to do something, like tuning in with what's the thought that's driving me to want to go spend $150 on Macy's. What's going on? You know what I mean? So you have these little trigger points in place that it tells you to go here and look what's taking place.
Yeah, so the word that comes up for me is discipline, right? Like this all hinges on how disciplined we are to either listen to the voice that we really want to be listening to, or to jot that down after, while we're drinking the coffee, we have the journal and we jot it down. We look at the bracelet and we actually force ourselves to think whatever we want to be thinking when we look at the bracelet. So it's like that discipline piece. I've found that when it's up to someone else, it's kind of weird. It's like a lot of my life, I was letting other people, like an external influence, be that discipline,
Yep.
or even be that motivation.
Yep.
And in the last couple of years, I've been shifting that to, okay, well, if I give my power away to someone and I literally just say to them, tell me what to do, like that is probably the riskiest sentence that I could ever say in my life, right? But I don't have much practice telling myself what to do and following through with certain things I do, like work and things that matter, the things that really matter to me that I've just been letting kind of slip under the rug. Like, how do you strengthen that discipline to really put your foot down with yourself when you know you want something, but it's hard?
So, couple of things. We've been brought up, I feel like in Western society, we've been brought up in an environment where we're literally told what to do from day in, day out. You start with school, you're told where to sit, you're told where to read. You know, you go to university, it's the same thing. You start working and you have your boss who's telling you what to do. So that piece is totally normal in wanting to be told what to do. But there are a couple of things, right? One, in my opinion, when you approach like making this mental change from the mindset that it's hard, you are already shortening your chances of success, right? And it is challenging, but I always challenge my clients to reframe that thinking. Like literally start first with, okay, one belief is that this is really hard, right? It's going to take effort, but what's another belief that they could hold? And sometimes it's, you know what, this is going to help me to be a much better version of myself, right? And so kind of reframe from that piece, because you know, once whatever you think, you know how the biology of our thought works, right? If you think something is going to cause you to release specific chemicals, and that's going to drive an emotion, and that emotion is going to drive you to make a choice. So start with reframing. That's really, really important, right? The second piece is make the process easy. If you make it very complicated, like believe it or not, some of my clients, I don't even have them start out journaling because that's a big commitment, especially if they have to do it like every day. If they have to do it, I'll say, you know what, for 3 days or one day, just journal for 1 minute. Just write down your thought. So making it as simple as possible, making it easy, because guess what? Our brains, like it's naturally wired to conserve energy, right? And it's going to look for the simplest way not to do a lot of work. So making the process easy. And then the second piece is making it attractive, right? So maybe it is that, you know what, if for today, let's say I set a commitment that I'm going to check in with my thoughts for 3 times today. I'm going to do it at lunch, I'm going to do it at dinner, and I'm going to do it when I take my dog out, you know, in the night. And that's what I commit to. Reward yourself. You know, maybe if you've done that, you're going to give yourself like a nice glass of wine. And here's this thing, like our brains, it likes gratification and reward. So if you pair it with something that is going to benefit from, and it's going to make it excited, you're kind of rewiring yourself to want to do the stuff that's hard because you know that there's a reward that's coming at the end. Or in some cases, kind of pair it with something fun. You know, so maybe it is that you really enjoy, like in the mornings, you really enjoy like listening to upbeat music when you're in traffic. That's a great time to kind of check in with, you know, your thoughts and scan like where you are. So there are different things that you can do, but I think the important piece is you definitely want to reframe, even though sometimes, you know it's hard, but look at what are some other things you're going to benefit from. You got to make it easy, you know, as simple as possible. I'm not sure if you follow Mel Robbins, but I'm a big fan of her, and she has, you know, the 5 second rule, which basically you count backwards. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what you're doing, because when you do that, right, like we all have our habits, right, that's stored in the ganglia region of our brain. And so in doing that, it takes us out of that kind of subconscious pattern and puts us in the prefrontal cortex of our brain, right? So that's where we can make the decisions and the choice to do something very easy right now, which is just take 30 seconds to check in with what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking that.
So I want to talk about absent positives. And I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this before, but I've mentioned it on the show on other episodes. A present positive is something that you've experienced before that was positive, that was pleasant in some kind of way. An absent positive is something that you've never experienced before, but you believe it would be something positive or pleasant. Mm-hmm. So an example, like, you know, if no one's ever held the door for me before going into, let's say, a restaurant, and I've seen other people holding the door for women going through, that's an absent positive. I can only imagine what that feels like until it's done for me. So when we're talking about like looking at our values and looking at our identity and looking at these patterns and looking at, you know, all the indicators, and that ultimate goal is something that we've never experienced before, an absent positive, how do you work with your clients to reach that goal when it's something they've never experienced before?
Right. Like, how do you move from being 200 pounds to 120 pounds when you've never experienced that before? And so there are really two things that will help you to get there, right? So one is what I call the power of your imagination and visualization. So it starts with getting clear with, you know, what it is that you want, but more importantly, why do you want it? And when you kind of break that down, if you take it a sequential step, your why, it's always going to come back to a specific feeling, a
Mm.
specific emotion that you want to experience, right? So once you're clear on that emotion, then what you want to do is you want to go out and find like images and representations or people who are experiencing what it is that you want to experience. So if you've never had a six pack before, it's going to be hard for you to kind of see yourself with a six pack, right? Like imagine that from a mental perspective. But what you can do is you can go out there and start finding images, or you can observe people who have a six pack and look at, you know, how do they move their bodies, right? Like how do they speak, how do they interact with each other, and you can start kind of mirroring those things if it aligns with your values, right, and who you want to be, and you start basically acting as if you are what it is that you want to become. And what you're doing, if you kind of think about the science behind it, is if you're really bought into it and you're subconscious, you know, it responds really well to like repetition. So the acting as if piece is the repetition piece. But also when you're getting that emotional state like consistently of what it is that you want to become, your subconscious mind is going to find a way to create that and make it happen, right? So you start there. And the second piece that I've also seen to work really well for some of my clients is just really living in a space of gratitude, right? Like, okay, so I want to get promoted at work. I've never gotten a promotion at work, but I am grateful that I'm being promoted because I'm going to get to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to help to, you know, work on these projects that's going to make our company much larger, much different, or whatever that outcome it is that you're looking to achieve. And when you're in that space of gratitude, you are going to want to go out and just create what it is that you're looking to create. And the last thing that I will say, there are instances where you might feel like you've never done the exact thing that you're looking to do, but I can bet you if you go back in your life, there are similar situations where you've had a challenge that you had to tap into. So a perfect example, when I was in business school, I had to do a lot of quantitative stuff. Now, the most quantitative stuff I've ever done in my entire life was when I was in high school. I had to do math, right? And then here I am in business school. I'm doing, you know, like microeconomics, and I'm doing finance and accounting and all these things after working for years in public relations and social media. And so, in truth, I've never really done a lot of quantitative stuff before, but I have been in an environment where I had to deal with a lot of adaptability and change, and I had to work with a lot of challenges. And so I was able to tune back into those moments when I had to rise to the occasion. And a big part of it was one, I had to go out and consult help, right? I had to be reader prepared. I had to ensure that I was ahead of whatever was going on so that when I step into the situation, like say a meeting, I'm not overwhelmed. So
Mhm.
you can find parallel situations that you've worked on before and apply it to what it is that you're actually doing to get you to move through the change that you're looking to make.
So let's say like we're making the changes, right? Like one thing that I've fallen prey to in the past is I have a goal, I achieve it, and then I either immediately set another goal or I'm still so focused in my first goal that I don't even realize I've achieved it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is like I almost blow past the goal, and then someday like something happens and everything crashes and burns, and I didn't even really get to enjoy the goal that I achieved because I didn't realize I was there, or I blew past it, whatever, right? So how are you helping your clients recognize and then celebrate these different goals that they're achieving?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do and I encourage with my clients is to celebrate yourself. So first of all, you set micro steps, right? And celebrate yourself every day when you're winning, right? Or when you did something that you felt good. Because even sometimes you might not necessarily accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish, but the fact that you were brave enough to go do it, that's a celebration, right? And at the end of every day, like I'm a big fan of creating rituals, right? So before you go to bed, like what are the top three things that I want to acknowledge and celebrate about myself? Right? And really just stopping and looking back at your day holistically or your week holistically, however you want to do it, and see, what do I want to recognize in myself? And also, I feel like a lot of us get caught in the I'm going to be happy when syndrome, right? So I'm going to be happy when I find that really awesome guy or girl, of my dream, or I'm gonna be happy when I get to X place in my salary. So I've literally moved people away from that where I a part of our process once they've set a goal, like we want to be clear on why you want to accomplish the goal, right? What's the feeling that you want to experience? And then I have my clients deliberately create situations that gets them in that state every day, even before they get to what they want. So sometimes, like I'll have them build a soundtrack of awesome. If it is that they want to feel really confident, then you're going to listen to music that makes you feel confident even before you achieve the goal. Or it might be going to a yoga class, because that's the thing that gets them, they're feeling the flow and growing it. So basically moving my clients away from thinking that your emotional state is tied to the external world, right? Like you're basically an effect of what's going on outside, because it's not, right? And I have them, do things like condition of belief. If you want to get to this goal, what's the one belief that you will need to have about yourself, that's going to take you there, and consistently creating references, right? Like going and looking for references that support that belief that they've created to take them to the goal, and every day going back to that, right? And coupling that with intentionally creating emotional states, whether it's through a gratitude journal, I'll have them do something what I call a brag book, or I'll have them listen to like what I call a soundtrack of awesome. And it's getting them in that emotional state. So they have the mindset piece taken care of, right? Because they've created the belief and they have the references that they want to support the belief. They have the emotion that they want to experience and the strategy to experiencing that emotion, right? And then the third piece is their physiology, because your body, believe it or not, it's really, really, really a powerful tool that connects back to your mind. In fact, I think like 90% of your subconscious is expressed through your body, right? So really start changing your physiology and getting into that physical state that you would be in if you had your goal, and deliberately doing that on a day by day basis. And the last thing that I'll say on this, because I believe in goal setting to the extent that you want to have something that you're steering towards. But one of the things that I have my clients do is set what I call identity outcomes, right? So if it is that they're looking to get to, let's say, 150 pounds, right? That, because that's the goal. A lot of times people get so focused on the goal that they forget to experience the process. But I even take it a step deeper to, it's not so much about the goal or the process, but it's who you're being, right? And I get them to that identity piece, some I am statement that serves as an overarching guide to what it is that they're looking to get, and then having processes that support specific behaviors to move them towards where they want to go so that they can enjoy the process, and have fun as opposed to just focusing on, let's say, the specific number that they want to see on the scale.
What's on your awesome soundtrack?
Oh, so actually, so I have a soundtrack on Spotify. So I have Dog Days. Your Dog Days Are Over. I have Work by, I don't know if you know the song. It's a really
You gotta sing these for me. I don't even know how they go.
so I can play it for you if you want.
And are they all like upbeat, and they, are any more
You know,
sentimental, or?
some of them are more like techno beats. Some of them are very, very upbeat. Some of them are kind of more grounded and spiritual. So it really is dependent on what state do I want to be in. Because what I've realized is you can change your emotional state really, really, really quickly. And it just requires making simple tweaks, like the way that you hold your body can literally shift what you're thinking and your emotions, but also just listening to music. Because we create neural pathways, believe it or not, based on the type of music that we listen to. So, you listen to some music and immediately you start feeling sad, and you probably start feeling yourself constricting. And then you listen to some music and you feel powerful and uplifting. Like when I listen to Work, let's say, for example, if I'm about to go into a big meeting, right, and I'm going to be presenting to executives and I know that it's a tough audience, the song that I need to listen to is Work. Because it doesn't matter what I am doing. Once I hear Work playing, I just immediately feel strong and grounded. And just within a minute or two, I can just shift from feeling nervous to feeling completely confident and grounded.
I love that. I mean, I have a background in music anyway, but like, I love that because it's so, like, that's why music is so awesome. Like it kind of dances with every dimension that we have, but especially that emotional dimension. Like it can take us from one feeling to another feeling. And I love
I
that.
will say to Rebecca, like, for some people, right, like music can change your emotional states. And it's one of the fastest ways that I personally have seen, you know, my clients use to hack the feeling that they want to have. But you can also do all, like physical things, right? I have clients who, if they want to feel really powerful and grounded, they go lift weights, right? Or they go run or take a walk, or some people. I actually have a client, like, she's really big on dancing, and so whenever she wants to actually get into a state of flow, like if she has a big project that she's working on and she wants to get in the zone, she knows that she needs to go dance for at least 45 minutes. And that's going to give her a couple hours where she just feels connected and in flow. So there are different things that you can do, to kind of change your state and basically create the identity that you want.
Yeah, I love this. And Benton, this has been like, for me, just like, the way that you and I normally work together is we dive right into the coaching, right? So like we'll talk about whatever subject is coming up for either one of us and we'll coach through it. But it has been extremely fascinating to listen to you. I don't think I've ever heard you talk like sort of from a more bird's eye view about what you do and how you do it. And for me, it's been extremely fascinating just to kind of like sit back and relax and listen, because, this isn't just a concept. Like a lot of times, even I describe something within a concept, but until we're actually doing the coaching, do you understand the how, right? The actual technical way of doing, that coaching. But you're very advanced in this, and maybe it's just the way that your brain works, or it's the experience, or both. It's everything. You have this way of making things simple for people. And you know, it's like when you watch an exercise video and the person on the right is like, this person's going to be modifying for today, right? So it's kind of just like, no matter what level you're coming in at, whether you've never observed things about yourself before and you've never analyzed yourself, or whether you have a lot of experience doing that, but you still have those inner critics and that gremlin or the assumptions, the limiting beliefs, whatever's going on. It seems like because you've been there and because you have put time and energy into transforming yourself, you are able to carry your clients in this way where, you know, you're not just the safety net, you've got that in place, but you're guiding them, allowing them to blossom and grow and lead that coaching, but being right there with them and knowing exactly how to adapt to where they are and where they want to go. And so this has been absolutely awesome for me, because I've never seen you express yourself in this capacity before. And it's absolutely incredible. It's fantastic. So here I am like thinking, oh, I'm so lucky to work with Benton. I know that other people want to work with you right now. Like they've been extremely impressed as well. So how can we get a hold of you? How can we work with you?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So the fastest way to actually get in touch with me is to connect with me on Facebook. I actually have a community called the Art of Thriving, and it's a community that's dedicated to helping high achieving women overcome their fear and overwhelm. You know, if they're burned out or feeling stressed, etc., you can search for Art of Thriving on Facebook. And you know, you can learn a little more about the group, and if you want to be a part of it, you can send an invitation, and we'll be happy to accept you. The other way to get in touch with me is, you know, my website. If it is that someone is looking to rewire the way that they're thinking and really step into a place where they have bulletproof confidence and motivation, and they want to ditch all the negative thinking and the fear that's holding them back, then they can also go to www.bentonmctaggart.com/apply. And it's a very simple process. There's a short application. You choose a time that works best for you, and then we'll hop on the phone and kind of dive in to see what's going on, and talk about next steps.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Oh, Benton, we haven't seen each other in a while. This is so good to catch up.
I know, this is like the perfect way to start the new year.
Oh yeah, it is.
Mindset.
I even forgot we're in a new year, honestly. Like so much happened in 2015.
I know, but it's my absolute pleasure being here, Rebecca, and I'm just so proud of you for doing this and just creating this space so that people can literally learn, you know, and get a sense of how they can make different choices so that they can literally create their lives on a moment by moment basis.
I love it. Well, Benton, I want to thank you, and I want to thank our viewers. Wow, what a cool episode, right? Like this was so interesting to kind of look into the scientific way of how we can change ourselves and how we can go after the goals that we want, and how we can even be gentle with the inner critics that we have and say, bye-bye, no longer, like, loved you while you were here, but see you later. You know, it's just so wonderful to be here with Benton and have him explain all of this to us in a way that we can really understand it, that it's not just conceptual. So if you guys resonated with Benton, which I know you did, reach out to him. He's so sweet. He's such a great guy, and he's an excellent coach. So that's it for us, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
You're welcome.
By the way, I want to ask you before I forget, what's the origin of your surname?
Weintraub?
Yes. Is it like German or
Russian?
It's Russian. Okay. Because I was like, is she Hispanic? Like, anyways,
You thought I was Hispanic?
For a long while, I thought you were
Did
Hispanic.
you really?
Yes. I don't know why. Yes. For a long time, I literally thought you were Hispanic. I don't know where that came from or whatever, but that's what I thought.
Really?
Yes.
Like Jewish didn't come into the picture for you at all? No?
No, Hispanic. I don't know where that came from.
My Spanish name was Yolanda.
Well, maybe it's that I picked that up intuitively, but for a long, long time, I literally thought you were Hispanic. I
Maybe
kid you not.
because
For a long time, I thought you were Latino.
really?
So I'm
Awesome.
I'm glad that you clarified.
I'm Russian and Italian.
That's amazing. That's an interesting combination too.
Yeah. Jason's Colombian though.
He's kind of maybe that's where I
Maybe
got that
that's why.
from. Probably.
That's awesome. Okay, cool.
No, that is funny. I know. It's the farthest thing. Like
Hispanic?
that's what I got. I don't know where it came from. Don't ask me. But anyways, I have four eyes, so it's my glasses. It's